Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about Unit 1, Lesson 13. It's Basic Ratio Solution Strategies. And what I mean by that is, if you're given a proportion, how do I get it to its basic ratio? Or using the basic ratio, how do I identify equivalent values in a proportion? So equivalent ratios with that. So that's what we're working on today. We are on page 33 in your math textbook. And so what I'd like for you guys to do is open up to that. If you have not done so already, and I want you to read these problems here, we're going to show the solutions on our paper. It says on your math boards, but if you have a sheet of scratch paper or anything else, that's fine. And so we're going to go through these here together. So I got here my trusty pen. And so we're going to look at 2 to 3, so that colon means, for a ratio, that means 2, is equal to, that's an equal sign, which is the two pairs of colons there, 10 to A. And so the way we set this up, we're going to start out by drawing a line just like a ratio. This is our basic ratio. And by terminology, a basic ratio means it is the smallest form of that rate of change, that comparative change. So this is like the smallest way I can increase for those ratios. So for instance, the Steelers win 2 games for every, I want to pick a crappy team, Cleveland's 3 wins. So I'm making the Steelers feel worse. So if the Cleveland Browns won 6 games, that means the Steelers won 4 games. So if that was, in the real world, that doesn't happen, but that's the same premise here. We're thinking about a constant rate of change. So 2 to 3 is the same as 10 to A, or, A as in there. Okay, either one's fine. What I want to ask you is what number can I multiply 2 by to get 10? I can think about it that way. Or what number would I divide 10 by to get 2? Both of which work wonderfully. Okay? The answer that you get for both of those is 5, because 5 times 2 is 10. 10 divided by 5 is 2. This is a factor of 10, and it is one of the parts of the product. So we're going to do multiplication because I like it. Okay, so times 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. Well, what I do then is I would take that same thing and I multiply it over here. And so I do times 5. This tells me what A is, because these are multiples of our basic ratio in the problem, 2 to 3. If I multiplied one side by 5, that means I'm in the 5th row, and it must be on the same row, so I multiply by 5 on the other one. So that means on the same row I have 10 to 15. So A equals 15. So I'm writing there 15. Let's take a look at problem number 2. This one, I am missing part of my ratio on the top. So it's B to 7. So the amount of blueberries to raspberries is B to 7. If I have 28 blueberries, 28 raspberries, and I have 20 blueberries, how many did I start with? Okay, something like that. And so I need to ask myself, well, okay, 7 times what is 28, or 28 divided by what is going to give me 7? The answer to both of those is 4. Okay, so we're going to do that. So 7 times 4, so I'm going to do that, times 4. And so if that's the case, B times 4 gives me 20. Well, what times 4 gives me 20? The answer is 5. So B equals 5. Sorry, that should be a 4, not a 7. Very confusing. This is the 4th row of our ratio table. What we're doing here is, what we've previously done is we've taken our proportion and we put it in a factor puzzle, which shows 2 rows on top of each other of a ratio table. Here we're just taking, finding the basic ratio, and then we're using that and multiplying by what row we're on. So this is row 4, so we're going to multiply by the 4th row. Taking a look here, basic ratio of 21 to 35. To find the basic ratio, I need to divide both 21 and 35 by the same number to reduce it. So this is kind of like simplifying fractions. I'm dividing both by the same factor to get it. And so 21 and 35, what factor goes into both of those? If you said 7, you're correct! All right, so we do divided by 7. 21 divided by 7 is going to be 3, 2, 35 divided by 7, 7. by the way, ratios can also be done as fractions, is going to give me 3 to 5. 3 to 5. That's how we get it. Now, I'm going to ask you, there's a strategy that we can use to make this easier, because you're never going to get just 21 and 35. In the real world, we get big numbers, okay? Take a look at number 5 for a second. You have 50 to 225 for number 6, and you have 60 to 140 for number 5. How can I get the basic ratio with such big numbers? I got a strategy, okay? Our answer is the greatest common factor. Now, you probably heard that before with fractions, but it works with ratios too, because guess what? Ratios can be fractions. So, let's take a look at it. The fastest way to find the basic ratio is to use the greatest common factor and divide both parts of the ratio from that. So, what that means is we don't always have to use the greatest common factor, but it helps. Okay? Take a look at Sam's and take a look at Ash's, and I'm going to let you read that, and then we're going to talk about that strategy here that Sam uses and Asha uses. You done? Okay, good. Okay, you paused and you finished and you read. Here it says, 24 and 36. We're going backwards, and I see that with this, they divided by 6 because they realized that 6 was a factor of both 24 and 36. So they divided by 6, and they saw it was 4 to 6. That's not a basic ratio. They can be divided by 2. So then they divided by 2 again, and they got the answer 2 to 3. Okay? Asha did it differently. She saw that 24 to 36 both share a common factor of 12. Okay? Because she knew that 24 times 2 or 12 times 2 is 24, and 3 times 12 is 36. So if I divide by 12, I should get my basic ratio. Well, let's see for a moment. Do we get the same thing if I divide by 12 and divide by 6? The answer is yes. Follow me, okay? So for this one, if we're looking here, it should be 2 divided by 6. So I'm going to divide, 24 divided by 36, I'm dividing it into 6 groups first. So imagine these are my 6 groups. And then I realized I could divide them evenly into smaller groups. So then I divided them again. My answer is, I still get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 groups that I'm still breaking it into. Well, what did I do here? 24, instead of multiplied by 12, divided by 12 gives me 2 per group for Asha's 2 to 3. So I still divided it into 12 groups. Both work and both make Mr. Swords very happy. Okay, so just keeping that thought. If you can find the greatest common factor, great. If you can't find the greatest common factor all at once just by looking at it, divide by a factor they share. Most of the time that might be 2s because they're evens, or 3s, or that type of thing. And then keep doing that until you get to a point where you can see the greatest common factor, or you get to the basic ratio. Okay? So let's take a look at number 1, and we'll do, or number 5, sorry. Basic ratio for 60 and 140. So here's what we're doing. We need to get it to 60. Oh, sorry. We're not doing that. 60 to 140 gives me my basic ratio. Okay, so I need to divide both of those by a number. I can divide by 10. Okay, so if I divide by 10, that gives me 14 to 6. Okay, I do that again, and I can divide both of those by 2, and I get my answer of 3 to 7. Okay, follow me? Alright, so now that means I can't break those up anymore. This one here, I get 50 to 225. Huge number, 225. I'm like sweating in my collar right now. So that's because how big it is. But I'm not going to let it fool me. I'm not going to let it mess me up. 225. I know in my mind, I'm thinking quarters. I have 50 cents. That's 2 quarters. That's 25 cents. So if I divide both of those by 5, or by 25, I get 2, because I'm dividing by a quarter. Dividing into quarters, or 25. And if I'm dividing this by 25 as well, I end up with 9, because every dollar is 4 quarters. $1 is 4, 8, and then 9. One more. So I get 2 to 9. Alright, what you're going to be doing in your homework is using this understanding, or your classwork. You're going to complete problems 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in your workbook, page 34. You're going to decide if it's a proportion problem. If it is, you need to use this strategy to identify the missing parts. Okay, to identify what's missing and solve the problem. See you in class.